You know what the biggest lie we're told after someone hurts us? That the right words can somehow change everything. That if we just say the perfect thing, they'll come running back, full of guilt and apologies. But here's the truth. The most powerful text isn't written to make him feel something. It's written because you've already stopped needing anything from him. Because here's what men don't regret: tears, long paragraphs, arguments. Here's what they do regret: losing access to a woman who realized she deserves better and actually acted on it. So what is the one text that will make him regret hurting you? It's this: hey, I just wanted to say thank you. You helped me see what I won't ever settle for again. I'm in a better place now, wishing you the best. That's it. Short, strong, stunningly clear. You're not angry, you're not chasing, you're simply gone with grace. And here's the beautiful twist. This message isn't actually for him. It's for you. It's the moment you stop writing for closure and start writing for freedom. It's the moment you stop asking for validation and start speaking from value. So if you're sitting there, phone in hand, wondering what to say to make him feel what he made you feel, don't. Say something that reminds you who you are. Say something that makes you proud to have walked away. Because regret isn't about losing you in the moment. It's about realizing later, when he sees you shining elsewhere, that he never even had the capacity to hold what he lost. And you didn't need him to get there. We spend so much time obsessing over the right words. Should I text him now? Should I wait? Should I sound casual, or would that come off as cold? Should I be kind, distant, empowered, or indifferent? But here's the real truth. No one talks about the words are just the surface. The real message, what actually hits him, what actually changes the dynamic, is the energy behind those words. Because you can send the exact same sentence, I'm done, from a place of exhaustion. Or you can send it from a place of clarity. You can say, I wish you well, and it can be filled with pain and unresolved heartbreak. Or it can carry the full weight of someone who has genuinely let go and moved forward. The words didn't change, the energy did, and energy doesn't lie. People can feel it, even through a screen, especially someone who's known you on an intimate level. He knows when you're trying to sound strong, but you're secretly hoping he'll chase you. He can sense when you're texting, I'm fine, but your energy is screaming, please notice I'm not. That's not power, that's performance. And when someone knows you, performance rarely works. Real power is quiet, it's clean, it's not loud or dramatic. It doesn't need to be. It's the kind of message that doesn't beg to be understood. It just exists in its own truth. And when someone receives that energy, it does something very different to them. It doesn't create a conflict or guilt trip. It creates a moment of silence, a pause. Because suddenly they're not looking at someone who wants closure, they're looking at someone who found it. That's what creates regret. Not your anger, not your sadness, not your ability to explain how much they hurt you. Regret comes from realizing someone has outgrown the game, that they no longer need the apology, the validation, or the repair. And more than that, they're not performing detachment, they've become it. That's the kind of message you can't fake. And it's also why you shouldn't write from a triggered place. If you're texting to get a reaction, to win, to hurt back, pause. Don't hit send. You might be technically saying all the right things, but if the emotional charge behind it is rooted in needing a response, then you're still handing over your power. People know when your words come from hurt versus healing. One invites a reaction, the other invites reflection. And the goal here isn't to manipulate a response. The goal is to walk away knowing you held your standard, that you left nothing of yourself behind trying to prove you were worth keeping. That doesn't mean you can't express yourself. It just means ask yourself one thing before you do. What energy am I carrying as I say this? Am I anchored in self-respect? Or am I still searching for a version of this that brings him back to me? That little gut check will tell you everything. You could say one line, I wish you well, and if it comes from a centered place, it will land 1,000 times harder than a 3-paragraph essay trying to explain your pain. Here's the irony. The more you let go of needing to be heard, the more powerful your words become. When you're no longer desperate to be understood, you stop over-explaining, you become still, direct, honest. And that shift in energy is unforgettable. Think about the people in your life who truly shook you, not because they yelled, but because they didn't have to. Because their silence said more than any rant ever could. Because their boundary didn't come with a scream, but a door that quietly closed and never opened again. That is the kind of power that doesn't just get noticed, it gets remembered. So the next time you sit down to send a message to someone who hurt you, pause and check yourself. Are you writing to change their mind, or are you writing from the mind you've already changed? That difference matters more than any sentence structure, emoji or delay tactic. Because power isn't in the text, it's in the part of you that no longer needs to be texting at all. We live in a world where everyone wants the last word, the final message, the paragraph that wraps everything up with a bow and leaves no room for misunderstanding. When someone hurts us, rejects us, betrays us, disrespects us, the first instinct is often to explain, to lay out the full case, to write the text, have the talk, send the voice note. Why? Because we want them to see. We want them to understand just how deeply they wounded us. We want them to realize what they lost. But the truth is, explanation is rarely for them, it's for us. It's a desperate attempt to be seen, to make our pain valid in their eyes, to make them realize they were wrong. And that instinct, while human, is exactly what keeps us tied to someone who's already moved on. Revenge in its purest form isn't about retaliation, it's not about evening the score, or trying to make someone feel what you felt. That's not power, that's a cycle. And cycles are how people stay stuck. True revenge is when you break the pattern entirely, when you don't give them the satisfaction of seeing you beg for their understanding, when you don't collapse into the emotional space they created for you, the space where you're left trying to prove your worth to someone who didn't protect it in the first place. You want to know what really haunts someone who hurt you. It's not a long message telling them how they broke you. It's the silence that comes after you've healed without them. It's the version of you they don't get to see anymore. It's waking up one day and realizing you're no longer in pain, you're just not available, and they don't get a front row seat to your glow up. People always expect you to fall apart, to lash out, to stay bitter, because that tells them they still have emotional real estate in your life. But when you grow, when you genuinely evolve, when you stop reacting and start redirecting your energy back to yourself, that's the moment they feel it. That's the moment the regret creeps in. Not when you cry, not when you call, but when you stop trying, because evolution is louder than explanation. You could send a 1,000-word essay, or you could show up one day living a life they're no longer part of, and that speaks volumes. The person they left behind no longer exists. She grew, she leveled up, she walked through the pain and came out better. And that's the version they'll never get to know. It's tempting to want closure, to think, if I just say this, maybe he'll understand. But closure doesn't come from him understanding. It comes from you no longer needing him to. It comes from realizing that the person who hurt you doesn't hold the key to your healing. You do. Every time you choose growth over drama, self-respect over explanation, peace over being right, you reclaim your power. There's this quiet moment that happens when someone checks in after hurting you. Maybe it's weeks later, months. They ask how you are, what you've been up to. There's curiosity in their voice, a hint of nostalgia, and you get to answer from a place of evolution, not explanation. You don't need to recount the sleepless nights or the tears they caused. You don't need to tell them how broken you felt. You simply let them see you've moved on. You're thriving, and not because you faked it, but because you chose it. That's what stings. Not the words, not the breakdown, but the unshakable grace you carry once you've rebuilt yourself. That's what they regret. Not that you were hurt, but that you got better without them. That the version of you they could have had is now reserved for someone who deserves her. So if you're sitting there crafting the perfect message, wondering how to make him understand, pause. pause. Ask yourself what would happen if you didn't explain. What would it look like to simply evolve? Because that's the best revenge. Not the text he can screenshot and send to his friends. Not the angry call he can tune out. But the life you create beyond his reach, the confidence you reclaim, the love you give yourself first, the peace he can no longer disturb. Don't waste your breath proving a point. Be the point. Be the woman who outgrew his access, who didn't just move on, but leveled up, who didn't seek revenge, because she became someone who didn't need it. That is what lasts. That is what echoes. And that is the story he'll remember, long after you've stopped needing to tell it. Clarity is one of the most underrated forms of power in relationships. We spend so much time trying to craft the perfect message, the perfect tone, the perfect way to say something without saying too much. We sugarcoat, we hesitate, we imply things instead of stating them. Why? Because we fear how the truth will land. We worry it will make us look weak, or worse, too much. So we end up speaking in code, hoping the other person will read between the lines and finally get it. But that's not communication. That's confusion wrapped in politeness. And confusion never earns respect. Clarity does. When someone hurts you, you owe yourself the honesty of expression, not the politics of emotional negotiation. You don't have to be harsh. You don't have to be cold. But you do have to be clear. Clear about how you feel. Clear about what you're no longer willing to accept. Clear about the fact that you are not going to keep participating in your own mistreatment. When you speak with clarity, you remove the loopholes. You take away the gray area where they might think they still have a chance to string you along. You take away the option for mixed signals. And most importantly, you take back control over your narrative. A lot of people avoid clarity because they're scared it will close a door permanently. They think, if I'm too direct, he'll think I don't care. Or if I say what I really mean, I might lose him. But here's the truth. If clarity pushes someone away, it's because they were never planning to meet you where you deserve to be met. The right person isn't afraid of clarity. They respect it because it shows you know who you are and what you're not willing to tolerate. Vagueness is often mistaken for emotional intelligence, like being mysterious makes you powerful. But there is nothing powerful about leaving someone confused about where you stand. There's nothing magnetic about pretending you don't care when your heart is breaking. And there's nothing attractive about silence that masks resentment. Real strength is in the calm, composed delivery of truth. It's saying, this is what I feel, this is what I need, and this is what I will no longer allow. No drama, no threat, just truth. When you're clear, you stop negotiating your worth. You stop waiting for someone to give you permission to walk away. You stop hoping they'll finally see your value if you just say the right thing. Clarity frees you from that exhausting emotional loop. It ends the game. It tells the other person, I see the situation for what it is, not what I want it to be. And I'm no longer pretending. The people who benefit from your confusion will never encourage your clarity. That's why you have to give it to yourself. You have to choose to be someone who doesn't need to be decoded, who isn't playing a role to keep someone's attention, who isn't afraid to say, this isn't enough for me, and then actually walk away. Because clarity isn't just about what you say to them, it's also about what you're willing to admit to yourself. It means no more pretending he'll change if you wait long enough. No more trying to turn crumbs into a meal. No more excusing his inconsistencies as mystery or emotional depth. When you're clear, you see the relationship for what it is, not what you've romanticized in your mind. You stop asking, what if he comes back? And start asking, why was I willing to wait in the first place? Clarity simplifies everything. You stop rereading texts. You stop waiting for signs. You stop outsourcing your peace to someone who can't even give you consistency. You say what you need to say, and then you move accordingly. That's not cold, that's mature. That's evolved. That's self-respect in action. And that's exactly what most people aren't used to, especially the ones who thrive on your confusion. The moment you get clear is the moment everything changes. The way you talk, the way you walk, the way you show up in conversations. You no longer carry the weight of trying to be palatable. You're not bending over backwards to be chosen. You're not trying to impress or prove. You are simply owning your standards, and that kind of clarity doesn't beg to be understood, it demands to be respected. So many people think clarity will cost them connection, when in reality, it's the only thing that leads to genuine connection, because when you're clear, you give people the gift of truth. And if they can't handle that, then they were only ever comfortable with the version of you that kept shrinking to fit their comfort zone. That version is gone now, and in her place stands someone who doesn't just speak clearly, but lives it. There's a moment after heartbreak where you catch yourself wondering if they miss you, if they think about you late at night, if they replay moments in their mind the way you sometimes do. That curiosity is natural, it's part of being human. But what you do next is what defines whether you stay stuck in that loop or start stepping into your power. Because there's a fine line between wanting to be missed and needing to be seen. And the truth is, if you're trying to be missed, you're still playing a role in their story. But when you've moved on, you're writing a new one, where they're no longer the central character. And that shift, subtle as it seems, is everything. When you operate from a place of "I hope he regrets it," you're still emotionally entangled, you're still giving your energy to his reaction, his realization, his remorse. But when you're truly done, you don't need to be missed. You don't need to be remembered, because your worth doesn't hinge on whether someone else finally recognizes what they lost. It stands on its own, and ironically, that's exactly what makes them miss you, when they can feel that you no longer need them to. People can sense when you're moving on versus when you're pretending to. There's a vibe, an energy, a presence that changes. You start responding differently. You stop waiting. You're not checking your phone, hoping for a notification. You're not posting things just to provoke a reaction. You're not dressing up pain in the costume of indifference. You've actually let go, and people feel that in the silence. You're not trying to get back into their head. You're too busy getting back into your own life. You're not leaving clues and breadcrumbs to be found. You've stopped trying to be found at all. Because when you've moved on, you stop broadcasting pain and start embodying peace. You stop curating your life to prove a point. You're not playing emotional chess. You're living for yourself, and that kind of freedom is magnetic. The real flex isn't disappearing to make someone worry. It's building a life that makes their absence irrelevant. It's not about showing off your glow up. It's about not needing their validation for it. You're not taking the trip, getting fit, laughing more, meeting new people just to prove anything. You're doing it because you finally remembered who you are, when you're not shrinking for someone who couldn't appreciate your depth. You don't want to be missed like a favorite song they can't stop replaying. You want to be the silence that makes them wonder why they can't hear you anymore. Not because you're punishing them, but because you've truly outgrown the noise. You're no longer reacting, posting cryptic quotes, hoping they'll see it and reach out. That version of you hungry for recognition is gone, replaced by someone who's too full of self-worth to be waiting for breadcrumbs of attention. When someone loses access to you and sees that you're not checking for them, not subtly reminding them you exist, not orbiting their world in any way, that's when the weight of what they lost finally hits. Because regret doesn't come from your sadness, it comes from your absence. And that absence isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, energetic. You're no longer theirs in any form, and that emptiness is louder than any message you could send. You're not chasing closure. You're not rereading old conversations trying to decode what went wrong. You're not living in rewind. You're in motion, forward. And there's a different glow to someone who no longer needs answers, because they've already decided that peace is more important than clarity. You're not hoping for a reunion. You're not praying for them to wake up. You've woken up, and it changed everything. The people who hurt you expect you to stay stuck. They expect the pain to keep you lingering. But when you rise, when you detach, when you stop making them the center of your healing journey, it disorients them. Because they're used to your softness, your waiting, your understanding. They're not prepared for your evolution. And by the time they realize what they had, you've already created a reality where their memory doesn't hold weight. You're not trying to be unforgettable. You're just being undeniably at peace. And that peace doesn't chase, it doesn't perform, and it doesn't apologize for letting go. You're not here to be missed. You're here to be free. And that freedom is the only thing they'll truly feel when they try to look back and realize you're already gone. In a world that constantly rewards overexposure, there's something incredibly powerful about restraint. We've been conditioned to think that the more we explain, the more we share, the more we post, the more desirable we become, as if laying ourselves out on the table will finally make someone see our worth. But in truth, mystery has always been more magnetic than over-explanation. There's a certain intrigue in not knowing everything, a kind of pull that only grows when someone can feel your presence, but can't fully figure you out. Less isn't just more, it's smarter, sharper, and often far more impactful. The desire to overshare usually comes from insecurity. We feel that if we don't give someone the full script, they'll misunderstand us, misjudge us, or worse, lose interest. So we compensate by filling the silence. We explain our every move, we rush to reply, we post every moment, every thought, every emotion, thinking that if they just saw all of it, maybe they'd get it, maybe they'd care more. But what we don't realize is that mystery speaks louder than overexposure ever could. Mystery invites curiosity. It leaves room for someone to wonder, to lean in, to engage more deeply. Because when you say less, every word you do say carries more weight. People don't fall for those who are completely accessible and constantly available. They fall for those who leave something to be discovered. When you're too quick to fill every silence, to give every detail, to offer every explanation, you leave no space for someone to step in and meet you halfway. You end up doing all the emotional labor, all the storytelling, all the chasing, and that doesn't create desire. It creates emotional fatigue. Real connection is sparked not by how much you give, but by how intentionally you give it. There's something incredibly attractive about a person who is secure enough to not reveal everything at once. Someone who doesn't feel the need to explain their silence or justify their boundaries. Someone who can be warm without being wide open. Someone who can share pieces of themselves without handing over the whole puzzle. Because when you let mystery do the talking, you send a very clear message. I don't need to be understood to feel whole. I'm not performing, I'm just living, and you're welcome to observe, but not entitled to access. People respect what they have to earn. When someone doesn't immediately understand you, it challenges them to pay closer attention. It makes your presence feel more valuable, more rare. That doesn't mean playing games or being cold. It means knowing that you don't need to give all of yourself away to be worthy of love. It means understanding that depth isn't about how much you reveal. It's about how grounded you are in what you choose not to. You don't have to prove your emotions by narrating every one of them. You don't have to show your confidence by announcing it. You don't need to post your healing for it to be real. There's a kind of quiet power in simply doing the work, living your truth, and letting the results speak for themselves. You don't have to say you've changed. Let your absence in certain places, your silence in certain conversations, your refusal to explain things you used to over-explain, be the sign that you have. Mystery isn't about being elusive, it's about being intentional. It's the difference between silence and stillness. One is avoidance, the other is control. When you choose stillness, when you choose to not rush in with a reaction, not hand over an explanation, not give someone a front row seat to your every move, you create space for value to rise. You give your presence gravity. And that's what people feel when you walk away, or when you stop engaging the way you used to. They don't feel confusion, they feel the weight of your absence. They feel the shift. They realize that what was once predictable is now unknown. And it's that unknown that wakes people up. Being mysterious doesn't mean being unreadable. It means being selective. It means you understand that not everyone is entitled to your thoughts, your reasons, your time, your softness. You give what's earned, not what's expected. You allow others to sit with their curiosity. You're not rude. You're just rooted in the idea that you don't owe anyone constant clarity. Sometimes the most powerful statement is the one you never say. Sometimes the most attractive energy is the one that makes people wonder, not because you're hiding, but because you've stopped over-explaining. explaining. Let them think, let them wonder, let them lean in and feel the pull. You don't have to sell your soul to be seen. You just have to know that what you're not saying sometimes says the most. When you embrace that, you stop trying to be impressive and start being unforgettable. Because the people who really matter won't need all the pieces at once. They'll be intrigued enough to keep showing up until they earn them. And that's when connection becomes real, not forced, not rushed, just earned, piece by piece, moment by moment, word by carefully chosen word. At the heart of everything you've heard today lies one core truth. Real power doesn't beg, chase, or over-explain. It moves with quiet confidence. You don't need a dramatic exit, a perfectly crafted text, or a performative display to make someone regret hurting you. Your evolution speaks louder than any explanation ever could. Clarity, self-respect, and restraint form a trifecta of strength that not only protects your peace, but reclaims your value. When you choose to move forward, not to be missed, but to be free, you shift the entire dynamic. And when you stop oversharing, stop overproving, and start living like someone who knows they're the prize, the game changes. Suddenly your silence carries more weight than your words ever did. Suddenly your absence becomes unforgettable, not because you wanted to be missed, but because you chose to outgrow what once diminished you. The best part, you didn't need revenge. You didn't need drama. You just needed to remember who you were before you started shrinking for someone else. And once you do, you'll never settle for less again. So let them wonder. Let them sit with the version of you they'll never have access to again. Because the real glow up isn't about being seen. It's about no longer needing to be.